Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be going over 10 fantastic cars that you can get off of the street in Grand Theft Auto Online. So obviously being off of the street, this means you will be able to steal these cars and put them directly into your garage. It also means all of these cars sell for less than $100,000. Anyway guys, we're going to get started with number 10. At number 10, we have the Ocelot Jackal. Now, honestly, this car could have been higher up on the list because it is a really good car. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen this car driving around in Grand Theft Auto Online, and you've probably just gone right by it because it's, well, not exactly a great looking car, but it's not a bad looking car either. Now, the Ocelot Jackal actually has some customization that you can do to it. It's got a few options like the hood there, you can see there's a scoop on it, and it's got a few more options beyond that. The performance of the Ocelot Jackal is not bad either. The acceleration is probably this car's best feature, but the handling on the vehicle is pretty good as well. Top speed is nothing to write home about because, well, obviously it's a car right off the street, so it's not going to be anything too special. You can also buy this thing off of Southern San Andreas Super Autos if you want to, although I would just recommend stealing it off of the street. Why spend money when you can get something for free, right? Anyway guys, that's it for number 10. Let's move on to number 9. Alright guys, at number 9 we have the Bravado Gresly. Now the Bravado Gresly is a really underappreciated SUV within Grand Theft Auto Online. This thing actually has some decent customization that you can do to it to make the car feel a little bit more your own and a little bit more unique. Now the Gresly's performance is not bad either. This car is actually pretty darn quick, especially for an SUV, and it's also a pretty capable off-roader. On top of all of that, I do think that this is a pretty good looking vehicle as well, being based heavily off of a modern Dodge Durango. I would really like to see Rockstar add a Durango Hellfire into the game or a Durango STX. I think that would be really cool. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they did it. Of course, this thing is a 4-seater, so you can take some of your friends around with you, and it's a pretty low-key vehicle, so you will probably be the only player in your session that's actually driving one of these things. Overall, the Gresly is a great vehicle, and it is purchasable from Southern San Andreas Super Autos if you cannot find one to steal off of the street. Anyway guys, that's it for number 9. Let's move on to number 8. At number 8, we have the Ubermacht Zion, or Xeon, depending on how you want to say it. Now, this is the hardtop version of this car. There is, of course, the Zion or Xeon Cabrio. However, I personally like the hardtop version of this car better. Now, the Zion actually has some pretty decent customization that you could do to it, obviously having an exhaust option, as you guys can see right there, having spoiler options, roof options, and bumper options as well. The Zion is also one of the best handling free cars in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. This thing has an insane amount of handling grip, which is really nice. You can go around almost any corner in the game as fast as you want, and the Zion is just going to hang on and stick to the road. When I say this thing has phenomenal handling, I truly mean it. The Zion is one of my favorite handling cars in the entire game. If somebody asked me to recommend them a great handling car, it's going to be the Zion, because it is very cheap. Obviously, being able to steal it off of the street is pretty huge, but if you can't find one, there are some for sale on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, like most of the other cars on this list. The Zion is definitely a car that I would encourage looking into if you guys have never seen one or had one before. They truly are really fantastic cars. They're pretty quick in a straight line too, the acceleration is not bad, and the top speed is okay too. But really the handling is the standout feature of this vehicle. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for number 8. Let's move on to number 7. At number 7, we have the Ocelot F620. Now the Ocelot F620 is a very good car in online. You've probably seen one driving around, and if you see another one, you should probably steal it and put it in your garage if you don't have one already, because as far as free cars go, the Ocelot F620 is definitely one of the best ones, especially performance-wise. Looks-wise, I'm not a super huge fan of the F620, but it's not the worst looking car ever, that's for sure, although it just could be maybe a little bit better looking. Now the car does suffer from understeer a little bit, which is pretty unfortunate. Other than that, the car's performance is really good. The car accelerates very well, it has a decent top speed for a car that you can get off of the street. Pretty good looks, but unfortunately no customization. That's the only reason why this thing is ranked a little bit higher, is because of the understeer and the lack of customization. But regardless of that, the car is still really good, and you should definitely still pick one up whenever you get the opportunity. If you can't find one on the street, you can find them for about $80,000 on Southern San Andreas Super Autos. Anyway guys, that's it for number 7. Let's move on to number 6. Next up guys, we have the Ubermacht Oracle XS. Now the uber-mocked Oracle XS is definitely a pretty underrated car in GTA. Unless you're really into the car community, you probably don't really know much about this car. Now you can buy it for $82,000 on Southern San Andreas Super Autos if you cannot find one to steal off of the street. But the Oracle XS basically follows in the regular Oracle's footsteps of being a really good four-door sedan. Now in my opinion, the regular Oracle is a much better looking car than the Oracle XS, but to each their own. The Oracle XS has very good handling, very good acceleration, and it does have a super strange ability to drift for some reason. I'm not really sure where it comes from, but the Oracle XS for some reason is quite good at drifting, I have noticed. Looks wise, it's not my favorite, and I don't think that this car has any customization whatsoever, but it is still a pretty cool car. Anyway guys, that is it for number 6. Let's move on to number 5. Alright guys, at number 5 we have the Benefactor Serrano. Not the Benefactor Serrano, the Serrano. Now the Serrano is a pretty cool SUV. This thing actually has some customization options which are pretty cool, and you can make this thing look a lot better than the regular Serrano in online once you've customized it. Now of course you can buy this thing from Southern San Andreas Super Autos for $60,000, or of course you can just steal it off of the street, which is of course what I would recommend doing. Now the Serrano is actually a pretty quick SUV, and couple that with the customization options that this thing has, it is actually a pretty neat little car. Now it's not going to be the greatest off-road vehicle, it's not going to be the greatest performing vehicle ever, but the Serrano really is pretty quick for being an SUV, especially a $60,000 SUV. And the customization that you can do to it will definitely separate it from any other Serrano that you see on the street. It has a roof spoiler option, it has exhaust options, it has grille options, and it's got a few more on top of that. Overall, the Serrano is definitely a car that I would recommend picking up. I only found out that this car has customization about a year ago when I made a customization video about this vehicle, and ever since then I've been pretty impressed with it overall. Anyway guys, that is it for number 5. Let's move on to number 4. Alright, next up we have the Karen BJ XL. Now this thing is of course stealable off of the street, or purchasable for $27,000 on Southern San Andreas Super Autos. Now the Karen BJ XL is a car that I'm sure many of you guys have seen on the streets of Grand Theft Auto Online. However, I bet most of you did not know that this thing actually has some pretty good customization options. As you guys can see, this thing has a roof rack, it has a bull bar on the front of it as well with a winch, and on top of that it's got some more customization as well. Now the BJ XL is definitely a car that I feel like is neglected by most players in online. I feel like a lot of people have never driven a customized version of these. If anything, you've probably stolen one off of the street out of desperation because you're getting attacked by a Mark II or something. But the BJ XL truly is a very good off-road vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online, and when you fully upgrade this thing, it is actually a pretty quick vehicle as well. The BJ definitely deserves a lot more love in GTA. This is a really sick car. I personally use mine as an off-road vehicle, although I don't drive it as much as I would like to because there are just some better options. But if you have a tight budget or you're super into collecting free cars off of the street, the Karen BJ XL is a great option for you. I would definitely recommend picking this thing up. That's it for number 4. Let's move on to number 3. Next up at number 3, we have the Obey Recado. Now the Obey Recado is another really cool and really underrated SUV in Grand Theft Auto Online. The Recado is definitely one of the most underrated SUVs in the entire game, and maybe that's for good reason. This vehicle's performance is not exactly super great, but it is pretty cool. I believe the Obey Recado has some customization options that you can do to it. I think the roof spoiler might be one thing, as well as some bumper options as well, maybe even some exhaust options. Or I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure I remember customizing this thing and putting some options on. The Obey Recado is a pretty quick SUV, definitely not going to win you any SUV races because the SUV category is very competitive in GTA these days. However, for a free mode vehicle that you can get for free off of the street, the Obey Recado is one that you cannot go wrong with. In my opinion, it is one of the better looking free SUVs in the entire game. It's got some nice details, it's got some nice body lines. Obviously, it's based pretty heavily off of an Audi Q5, which is a pretty nice car in real life. The acceleration is okay on the Obey Recado, and the handling is pretty okay as well. Top speed is nothing to write home about, but you're not really buying this car for the performance, you're more so buying it just because it's a cool car to have, and it's a pretty underrated SUV. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for the Obey Ricardo. Let's move on to car number 2. Next up at number 2, we have the Balakan Prairie. Now this is a car that I feel like a lot of people overlook in GTA, and maybe for good reason, but it is a pretty cool car. As you guys can see, I've customized this thing quite a bit. So it does have some pretty good customization options. It's got bumpers, it's got skirts, hood, spoiler options, livery options even. And of course it is an OG car from 2013. So it's pretty cool, but it's also pretty played out. Not many people have a Balakan Prairie in GTA, so if you want a cool car that you can take to a car meet and show off, the Balakan Prairie is definitely one that you can do that with. This thing goes for about $25,000 on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, and for that price you do get a pretty good performing car and definitely a car with some good customization options. Now my one beef with the Balakan Prairie is that it is a front wheel drive car, so the handling is a little bit less than ideal and the car tends to understeer quite a bit. So we don't love that, but everything else about the Balakan Prairie is pretty damn good. The acceleration overall is decent and it has an okay top speed, but the handling is really where this thing gets let down, unfortunately. Even then, the handling is not as bad as it could be, so there's really not much to complain about. The Balakan Prairie is definitely a car to look into if you guys are interested. With that being said, let's move on to the number 1 vehicle on the list. And at number 1, we have the Shyster Fusillade. Now the Shyster Fusillade is a very, very underrated car in Grand Theft Auto Online. I'm sure many of you guys have seen Fusillades driving around on the streets, but you've probably never seen one like this, or maybe you have, but there's a good chance that you probably haven't. The Fusillade has pretty much every customization option you can think of. It's got exhaust options, spoiler options, hood options, bumper, skirts. Pretty much, if you can think of it, the Shyster Fusillade has it as a customization option. Now on top of that, the Shyster Fusillade is also the best performing car that we've gone over on this list, right up there with the F620. A fully upgraded Shyster Fusillade is almost as fast as a regular Banshee. Somebody told me that in the comments the other day, and I can honestly believe it. The Shyster Fusillade, once you get it going, is a very, very quick car. Obviously, you can steal this thing off of the street, or you can buy it on Southern San Andreas Super Autos if you choose to. The acceleration on this vehicle is great, the sound that it makes is great as well, top speed is decent, and the handling is great as well. There's really nothing to dislike about the Shyster Fusillade. It's a perfect little 2-door coupe, and being free off of the street is just another great bonus. The Fusillade is definitely a car that I would recommend picking up, guys, if you do not have one already. It is super, super worth it to own one of these. Anyway guys, that is pretty much it for the video. If you guys enjoyed this video, or if you want to see a part 3 to this video, let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't seen part 1 of this video, definitely go and check that out. There's 10 more great cars that you can get off of the street for free in that video. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed this video, a like is of course appreciated, if not dislike. Subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.